Hello, Vivit Worldwide members. I'm Jonathan Wright, and I'm here to talk about the local user group in London. This blog is going to go through some of the topics that we discussed at the Micro Focus HeadQ in the UK. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the interesting topics which were raised by some of the large banks that was attending and some of the large retailers, and we were focusing on ALM Octane. So for those out there members who are interested in the application delivery management section and family of products, this will be really hopefully helpful for you. So some of the big questions that came from some of these large enterprises was, how do they migrate from ALM, so the ALM.net platform, which we know is Heritage, Mercury Interactive, Quality Center, Test Director, and also to move to something like ALM Octane, which is kind of enabling the next generation of continuous delivery and deployment. So the question was, how do you migrate from your traditional ALM .net to Octane? Now, there's a couple of viewpoints on this, in the sense of how do we get things like the repositories out. So for those users of, say, Unified Functional Tester, if you've stored all your scripts in your Quality Center or ALM.net repositories, how do you get those out and then into, say, for instance, a Git repository or an SVN repository, so that you can they can become continuous testing artifacts running in Jenkins automatically, and the results coming back in Octane. So there was no clear path as such, but I think partly what we raised with the research and development teams that were there from Micro Focus and the product management team and also the customer success team was, this is a real challenge for large organizations everywhere. And I think as we move into low code or no code kind of GitHub approach to, or GitOps approach to delivery, then these tools need to look at how they potentially pivot to support these new requirements. So for those who are not used to the no code or low code, this is things like infrastructure as code, platform as code, or tests as code. So a simple YAML script, which is a markup language that allows you to identify a particular set of variables and scenarios and maybe nodes that you want to run on it. And this is kind of really changing based on, especially with things like Docker and containerization. So a bit of an example is the traditional microserver, which you might be used to, which might be running a lab environment, is now moving into a more favorable Cube instance, which you could run on something as simple as a Raspberry Pi, or a cluster of Raspberry Pis that would allow you to be able to run a Docker instance. So for instance, ALM Octane, it can run on a Docker instance, and so can LeanFT. So part of it is, as we go into this low code, no code scenarios and things like container management tools like Cube, part of it is how do we support these kind of multi-cloud target endpoints. So there's a lot more challenges that are coming through, and I think these were raised by the community. The next one, kind of going into that, was also the look of reuse. So if you've got those great UFT libraries and object repositories, partly we discovered the fact that you can convert your UFT object repository into a LeanFT repository. Now again, this kind of raised a concern around, well, how do we do things like version controlling? And if it's a one-way conversion process, how do we potentially then bring that back into a UFT? So as developers start utilizing the low code scenarios and start developing within their IDEs, Eclipse, IntelliJ or Visual Studio, how do we leverage what they've got from the object repository? Equally, I think there was a big yesterday there was the announcement of the new AI capabilities that have gone GA for the UFT product suite as well. So part of the challenge of why they've implemented AI and NLP for dealing with things like the domain object repository, domain object model, is so that it reduces maintenance. But if this great capability is coming into the UFT tool set, I'm guessing that people would also want to be able to leverage it from the LeanFT, being able to release it and put it into a Docker container and execute it, in the cloud at high volumes or in their own local clusters. So I think there was a couple of questions around that which we're going to follow up with, and then there was also a question around behavior-driven development techniques. So obviously LeanFT is great when it comes to dealing with executable specifications, so things like Cucumber and SpecFlow. So we're going to get a demo, and I'll include it onto the blog for how you can run behavior-driven development within your within LeanFT, but also within Octane. So the fact that Octane can actually you can write the given when then scenarios in Octane, they can be taken out, and then the feature files and the test models can be generated out of the back of that. So I think there's some interesting stuff coming through the pipeline with that. There was also talks around Vertica, so their predictive analytics platform, powering the next generation of ALM Octane, but this is obviously a little bit down the line from a predictive ALM perspective, which is why I'd like to kind of thank some of the presenters who attended from the community in London. So the first one is a good colleague of mine, a guy called Adam Smith. We worked at a large investment bank together in the past, and one of the challenges which we found there when we were dealing with this 2,700 application, 10,000 endpoint kind of problem space was the real challenge around bringing in some kind of level of intelligence. So, all the reports and the results that are coming from different systems. So this could be a Jenkins, this could be a CI systems, this could be coming from unit tests, it could be coming from ALM plus Octane plus Jira plus another tool. And of course, Micro Focus mentioned yesterday around the MF Connect tools there, but actually it was not just what was traditionally the ALI, so the Application Lifecycle Intelligence platforms, to get data from one system to another. It was all around, well, how do you, potentially harvest the ecosystem for results and then use that as actionable insights. So Adam demonstrated something that the Barcelona labs teams had been working on for a number of big enterprise customers. And what they were doing is using AI to train the system to identify defect clustering, make recommendations on which members should fix which from defect triage point of view. There's a lot around predictions and data visualization of useful information collated from a number of different systems. And so I'm going to try and get a demo that you guys can see in the community. I also, a thanks to Hugh Price from Curiosity Software, who's also put together an end-to-end demo, which I'll put a placeholder on. I don't know if it's going to be finished for when this blog goes live, but this is an entire journey from model-driven development or model-based testing, all the way through to actually Octane running the LeanFT, and then the LeanFT Docker containers, then pushing the results back, and then the results coming back to give you an idea of the overall coverage of test artifacts. So that'll be a really interesting demo to watch out, and that also includes some test data management challenges, which I know some of the customers have been talking about, some of the challenges in that aspect as well. So also thanks to Hugh Price. And then we also had another presentation from a great company who wanted to show us how to do things like the SpecFlow and the BDD, which I mentioned before, but also how you can actually go about running and executing tests or test automation within your CI/CD pipeline and again showing you some of the absolute essentials. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to also get their webinars and links as well, so that way you can check those out. They're a bit longer videos, but you know, I think they'll definitely be worth checking out. Okay, well, I'd like to thank everyone for their time, and I hope you enjoyed the blog.